Is the press, as Trump says, the enemy of the people? Well, it seems to depend on which people you mean. The press, who I'll call the media from now on, is definitely not the enemy of the Democrats. Virtually all mainstream news outlets cover Trump and his supporters negatively, at least 80% of the time.
The Media Research Center's analysis of the January and February evening newscasts on ABC, CBS, NBC, coverage on President Trump was 91% negative. Shocking.
A Harvard study found that 80% of President Donald Trump's media coverage during his early days in the Oval Office has been overwhelmingly negative. This number is almost double when compared to the first 100 days of Barack Obama. Harvard professor Thomas E. Patterson said that Trump is, quote, setting a new standard for unfavorable press coverage for a president.
President Trump is slamming the media today as hundreds of newspapers publish op-eds pushing back against his claim that journalists are the enemy of the people. In a tweet earlier, the president wrote, quote, the fake news media is the opposition party. It is very bad for our great country, but we are winning. He then later went on to say there is nothing that I would want more for our country than true freedom of the press. The fact is that the press is free to write and say anything it wants, but much of what it says is fake news, pushing a political agenda or just plain trying to hurt people. Honesty wins. A new commentary by Michael Graham on CBSNews.com commentary, quote, newspapers don't help themselves by coordinating against Trump, suggests editorials criticizing the president may actually be counterproductive.
When they say counterproductive, of course, they mean that it's not going to accomplish its intended purpose, and it might actually help Trump. And in case you're wondering why Trump supporters and Republicans call CNN the Clinton News Network, here's a reminder.
Take quite a while longer. What happens to other folks who want a chance to run against her?
Because she's doing what they call in politics freezing pockets. Because the donors are giving her money thinking she's going to run. That means they're not going to have available money for other candidates if she doesn't. And I don't think she's going to give it to them.
She's on her way to deciding.
We'll see.
About deciding.
We couldn't help her any more than we have.
I know.
You know what I mean? She's got just a free ride so far from the media. We're the biggest ones promoting her campaign, so better.
The media are not the enemy of Antifa or other far-left anti-fascist groups. Here is Chris Cuomo of CNN, who at first sounds as if he is condemning Antifa violence.
Counter-protesters did. There were good numbers of them. The vast majority were peaceful. But peppered in the crowd were members of Antifa, or anti-fascists. They covered their faces, confronted police, and berated journalists. And that was wrong.
But then he switches gears and justifies their violence by saying that it's okay if it's fighting hate and bigotry. Of course, it's supposed to be understood by everyone that those on the right, those who support Trump, and those who don't subscribe to the leftist agenda are bigots and haters. Note the banner, no moral equivalence between Nazis and Antifa. CNN is tacitly agreeing with Antifa that if you're not with Antifa, you're a Nazi. Opposing views are hate and must be stamped out, according to Cuomo. By extension, then, the media are, therefore, not the enemy of communists, the flag of which is often openly displayed at many of these anti-fascist protests.
But I argue to you tonight, all punches are not equal morally. In the eyes of the law, yes. But in the eyes of good and evil, here's the argument. If you're a punk who comes to start trouble in a mask and hurt people, you're not about any virtuous cause. You're just somebody who's going to be held to the standard of doing something wrong. But when someone comes to call out bigots and it gets hot, even physical, are they equally wrong as the bigot they are fighting? I argue no. Fighting against hate matters. Drawing a moral equivalency between those espousing hate and those fighting it because they both resort to violence emboldens hate, legitimizes hateful belief, and elevates what should be stamped out.
Phenomenon that is has a large following across the country, but because it is the counterpart to the conversation about how President Trump dealt with that particular moment in American history.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting. Listen, there's, no organization is perfect. There was some violence. No one condones the violence, but there were different reasons for Antifa and for these neo-Nazis to be there. One, racist, fascists, the other group fighting racist fascists. There's a distinction there. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
So, CNN's Don Lemon also defends Antifa. The original Antifa in Germany in the 1930s was an organization sponsored by the Communist Party of Germany to promote communism. Anti-Fascist Action, which was what the name of the German organization was fighting fascism in 1930s Germany, but it was promoting communism. The media are also not the enemy of socialists. Note the glowing reception given to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on ABC's The View. Nothing but positive, nothing but adulation. And that goes for, as she says, for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren also. Socialists, all of them. And she says democratic socialism is very different from plain old socialism. And her understanding of democratic socialism is that in a wealthy and moral America, nobody should be too poor to live. Sounds a lot like the war on poverty of LBJ back in the 60s. And we all know how well that worked out.
Oh my goodness.
I am so proud.
Oh, thank you.
I am so proud of you. Congratulations. We had you walk out to Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run because your opponent, Joe Crowley, dedicated a rendition of the song to you after your victory, which was incredible. And here you are.
Yeah.
You're only 28 years old. You'll be the youngest woman ever elected to Congress if you win. And in your campaign video, you said, women like me aren't supposed to run for office. Why did you run?
I ran because I felt like we could do better and that we could be better as a country. And I looked around.
I believe there's a fracture in the Democratic Party, and you consider yourself a democratic socialist like Bernie Sanders, correct? Nancy Pelosi was asked about you, and she didn't exactly give you a ringing endorsement. I mean, and you didn't exactly give her a ringing endorsement. Do you think that the future of the Democratic Party is socialism?
Well, first of all, there's a huge difference between socialism and democratic socialism. Democratic socialism, and really what that boils down to me, is the basic belief that I believe that in a moral and wealthy America, in a moral and modern America, no person should be too poor to live in this country. That is what I believe. And that's what I believe. You know, I think that for young people, I think the future, here's what I think. I think the future of the party is working class. And I think that what I represent, and perhaps, you know, Senator Sanders, also Senator Warren, there's a lot of working class champions in the Democratic Party. And I do think that that's the future.
The media definitely are not the enemy of minorities, Muslims, or other so-called marginalized groups. They cover up or make excuses for bad behavior among blacks, Muslims, and Latinos. Levels of black crime are of epidemic proportions across the country, yet the average person is oblivious because each incident is covered only locally and is treated as an isolated incident. So people have no idea of the scope and frequency of it nationwide. Latino and Muslim criminality is similarly played down by the media. So, who are the media the enemy of? Well, let's see, who's left? That's right, white people, who are still the majority, about 64% of Americans. So when Trump says the press is the enemy of the people, he's more than half right. This explains why the media hate Trump so much, why they call him a racist, why they call him a bigot, why they try to ridicule him at every opportunity. Because he's the first president in many decades who stands up for white people. Well, that about wraps it up for this video. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking and controversial subjects. Till next time, be well.